Welcome to episode 143 of the No More Wasted Days podcast. I'm your host, Sara, and today I'm going to be talking all about the mindset shift that finally made quitting drinking feel easy. I know that you're going to think, what? This can actually feel easy, but in the beginning, I kept thinking, this feels too easy. What am I actually doing? And I narrowed it down to a few things. Now, there were things in my first few days that I was doing that I feel like were momentum based. They were me just feeling so excited, nervous, anxious, all the feelings to start the journey that I was like, I'm doing this. I'm not going to back down. I'm going to keep going no matter what. And there were things that I did early on, like say the first 30 days, the first 60 days, that really helped. And then there's something big that I did farther on in my journey, somewhere around 100 to 150 days, and it was the big game changer. And I'm going to share all of these with you. I'm also going to tell you why this mindset works. I'm going to explain it in detail, and then I'm going to tell you how to get into this mindset. So this is going to be a big episode. If you're someone who's just starting your alcohol-free journey or you're thinking about starting it, this is something that you need to hear because I think we talk about mindset shift a lot, and it's just this really gray area where people are saying, you got to change your mindset. You got to do this thing, but I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it today. I'm going to give you steps that you can go out and start using today. Now, before we dive all the way into this episode, I want to invite you to download my free 10 mantras that helped me so much in the beginning of my alcohol-free journey, and they helped me in particular with my mindset, which is what we're talking about today. So if you're finding it really hard to stay on your alcohol-free journey and you're always thinking about oh my gosh, this is so boring. Oh my gosh, this is so hard. Oh my gosh, I'm just going to fail again. That's all mindset stuff. And these 10 mantras are gonna help you feel like this isn't as hard anymore. So it's kind of step number one, because one of these mantras I'm actually gonna talk about in this podcast. But if you go download this, you're actually gonna get 9 other mantras, and one of them is bound to speak to you and help you train your mindset. So all you need to do is head to the link in the show notes of this episode, and you can download those 10 free mantras today, and they will be in your inbox before you're done even listening to this podcast. You can also head to nomorewasteddays.co/10-mantras. Now that's 10, the number, so 10-mantras. So you can head to that link or just check out the link in the show notes and you're all set. All right, let's get back to the episode. So when I was brand new to my alcohol-free journey, I wrote down a certain sentence and it helped me so much. I actually talked about this not too long ago in an episode, but I sat down on the first day where I quit drinking and I wrote down the sentence, I do not drink. I didn't know if I believed that sentence. I was kind of like, oh my gosh, is this real? Am I really doing this? And I just told myself, I'm not going to worry about all that stuff. I'm just going to write this down. So I wrote it down and I also said it out loud. I did this every single day for the first 100 days of my alcohol-free journey. After the first 100 days, I did it every single weekday for the first year. I really did do this every single day. I wrote down this mantra or affirmation, and it became my new truth. By speaking this sentence to myself and writing this sentence to myself, I really started to believe I do not drink. And it made it easier for me to say, nah, I don't need a drink when somebody asked me if I needed anything like a beer or a glass of wine. It also made it easier when I would pass by an end cap at a grocery store with my favorite beer, which actually happened. And I thought, oh my gosh, my favorite beer is on sale. I should get some. And then I go, that's so silly. You don't drink. It got to the point where I actually retrained my mindset by writing this down every single day. I feel like this feels too simple for people. They hear this and they're like, there's no way this is going to work. But we simply believe truths that we have created about ourselves. When I was a drinker, I believed I'm the drinking party girl. That's who I am. And when I quit, I started believing I'm sober Sara. I don't drink. And that became my new truth. Now, it didn't happen overnight. Like I said, I did it for the first 100 days of my journey. I made sure I never skipped this piece. And then I did it for every single weekday. So it took time. I can't tell you how long it took me to actually believe this sentence because there were many days where I would write it down and I'd be like, whatever. But I would just push down that feeling of whatever and then I would write down the sentence again. So this is definitely the first thing I did to help me change my mindset when it came to quitting drinking. And it's the first thing that I want to urge you to do. It's also the first mantra in my 10 free mantras list that I mentioned at the beginning of this episode. So if you haven't already, be sure to go download that. The link to that is in the show notes of this episode. Now, the next thing I did that makes people go, ooh, I don't know if I want to do this, came farther along in my journey. So if you have just started out, please do not feel like, oh my gosh, I got to do this thing that this lady said. It's what's going to make quitting drinking finally feel easy. Now, from days to about 100 or 150, I can't really remember, I was telling myself, you can go back to drinking if you want to. If this isn't exactly what you wanted, you can go back. Now, I loved my alcohol-free life. I was just obsessed with all the amazing things that were coming my way. That was also because I was really training my mindset in that way. I was like, you're going to find all the good in this. You are not going to see the bad. When you do, you're going to shift your mindset. So that was a big part of it. But around 100 to 150 days, I finally decided I'm never drinking again. I know I'm never doing this again. Now, they say, and they are, I don't know, people in the recovery world. I'm not really sure who they are, but in spaces like AA, they say, don't say never, because you might go back, you might relapse, never say never type thing. And they're saying that because they want you to stay vigilant on your journey. I still want you to do the work. But when I drew the line in the sand and I told myself, I'm never drinking again, it made it so much easier. It made it so I had less mental noise going on. It made it so when that voice would come up going like, so we're never going to drink again, that I could just go, yeah, we're never going to drink again. What's the big deal about that? Because all these amazing things are coming your way. You're starting to see that life is so much easier for yourself without alcohol. And so that's why I say it takes a little while for this one. It can feel really scary, and we're going to acknowledge that, and I'm going to help you address that. But there's a lot of parts with this that are really, really awesome. And I just want you to take the time to hear this and go, okay, I can see where she's coming from. I can see how this might work. Now, when you tell yourself, I'm never drinking again, you have fewer negotiations with yourself. When you're driving home from work and you're thinking, am I going to drink tonight or not? You're like, no, I'm not going to drink. I don't drink anymore. I'm never going to drink again. You're kind of like, oh, okay, well, that's easy. And then you start realizing that other things are coming more easily to you. Mornings start to just feel simpler and not as chaotic. And you can do things in the evening that you used to not be able to do because you had been drinking. All these things start coming your way because you draw this line in the sand. Now, I know there's people out there that disagree with this and they say, don't do this, but it's something that worked for me. And I always say, take what's going to work for you in this podcast and leave the rest. So if you know doing this might actually make you feel like you are stuck in a prison, then don't do it. If it doesn't work for you, then take the sentence, okay? But I just want you to know that when I finally made this choice for myself, my journey became so much easier. And I hear this from other people, so I know I'm not alone in this, where people just go, yeah, for the first 6 months to a year, I kept telling myself, well, maybe I'm going to go back and maybe I'll drink again. Then they suddenly thought, I'm not going back to alcohol. Why would I do that? Now, I want you to know that if you're listening to this and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, never feels terrifying, that is totally normal. So let's just first throw that out there. Totally normal. It's normal to feel grief over losing your drinking self. It's normal to feel this fear of being boring or the dread of social friction or just the what ifs. So if you're feeling like this whole never thing just feels terrible, you're not alone. Lots of people feel this way. Even I couldn't say it to myself for a long time. But I want you to reframe the idea of never and remind yourself that it's not a prison sentence, but it's an identity. You are taking on a new identity. It's just like when I finally quit smoking, which actually really officially happened when I quit drinking. But when I quit smoking cigarettes, I was like, no, I'm not a smoker anymore. I had to take on a new identity. And when I quit eating meat, I had to take on the identity of a vegetarian. No, I'm a vegetarian. I'm not going to eat meat anymore. That was my new identity because it wasn't always easy to be like, oh, oh, I'm at this function. Everything is meat. All I'm going to get to eat is a handful of potato chips and some carrot sticks. It'd be easy for me to slip if I was just kind of like, well, sometimes I eat meat. But when I tell myself, no, I'm a vegetarian, then it makes the decision feel more simple. It's just done. It's cut and dry. I'm like, I'm going to eat when I get home. So decisions like this actually simplify your choices rather than shrinking it. And I want you to know that because I know that it can feel like saying never is like, oh my gosh, never, 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 never. But think about it like, yeah, never, never. I'm a non-drinker now. That's who I am. And think about how badass it is that you're a non-drinker. I'm alcohol free. I can do what I want when I want because I'm never being held back by alcohol. So of course I'm never going back. And that's really when people say, are you ever going back? I'm like, why would I? And that's the mindset shift that happened when people are wondering, where do I get to the point where I can take it or leave it? That's when it happened for me, when I said, well, I'm leaving it and I'm okay with that choice. And I want you to know that you don't have to feel ready to decide. You just decide first, and then you start building the feelings through actions. You start creating habits in your life that turn you into this identity that you're creating. I started asking myself things like, what would a non-drinker do? And I started doing all of those things, even if sometimes they felt silly. I was like, I'm going to do that because that's what I think a non-drinker would do. I just started walking the walk and talking the talk, even if sometimes I was like, is this real? Am I really doing this? And I'd be like, yeah, of course you're really doing this. So why does this mindset work? I think it's one thing for me to say, hey, this worked for me, but I did some research and I found some other articles online that say, hey, this is why this actually works. And I'll link all the articles in the show notes of this episode. So if you feel like I want to learn more about this, you can go check these out. But first, I want you to know that identity beats willpower. When you say, I don't, you speak from identity, which strengthens refusal. Experiments show that framing a refusal as I don't versus I can't increases empowered, goal-consistent choices because control feels internal and final. Also, when we have fewer decisions, it equals less fatigue. I've talked about decision fatigue a few times, that we only have so many choices we can make in a day, and we want to save our willpower in quotation marks for the big question that will come at the end of the day of, am I going to drink tonight? We still want to have decision-making abilities when that question comes along. So when we just draw the line in the sand, it makes it so we don't actually have to make that choice, if that makes sense. So constantly asking yourself, am I going to drink tonight, will drain your self-control. But the decision fatigue research that I have seen actually show that repeated choices and self-control acts sap regulatory capacity. That one pre-made rule, like I'm never going to drink again, will reduce that load. Now let's talk about if-then planning. This is actually when we say, if trigger X happens, then I do Y. If we have this if-then planning in place, it makes slip points much weaker. And this kind of planning actually helps people drink less. I'm always telling my students that planning is where all the magic happens. We have to be totally planned, and this can be one of the ways we do it. If X happens, then I'm going to do Y. If someone asks me if I want to drink, then I'm going to say, no, thank you. I don't drink anymore. If I'm walking through the grocery store and my brain says, hey, are we going to put some beer in the cart? I'm going to tell myself, no, we don't do that anymore. Let's actually go pick out a fun non-alcoholic drink instead. That's as simple as that if-then planning can be. But I really want you to think about this, and especially with your triggers in mind, because the more specifically we think about our triggers, the more that our plans will become concrete. And I also want you to know that want to beats have to every single time. When you say, I want to be alcohol-free, that feels so much more powerful than I have to be alcohol-free. Sometimes we can feel like this is our last resort. This is what we have to do. We have to quit drinking. But when the motivation actually feels self-endorsed, like we're the ones who came up with the idea, we experience fewer temptations and obstacles. This makes abstinence feel so much easier. Now, this is exactly what I did for myself when I finally said, I'm never drinking drinking again. And I was thinking to myself, I want to be alcohol free for the rest of my life. This feels so much better for me. Of course, this is what I want to do. And when I thought about it that way, I was like, oh my gosh, of course. Now, I could easily look and say, well, I'm a person that has to be alcohol free because I'm a person who can't just have one. I've done the research on myself. I can clearly see that now. So I have to be alcohol free. That feels kind of like a punishment, right? But if I say, no, I want to be alcohol free, it just feels better. It feels easier for me. That feels so much better. Now, lastly, I know all this talk can feel really rigid almost, but I want you to avoid the abstinence violation effect. It can backfire if a lapse does happen. The abstinence violation effect model shows people who interpret a slip as total failure spiral into more use. So the solution to this is to plan compassionate damage control in advance. It goes back to that whole planning thing. Like if a slip does happen, you have a plan, you know what's going to happen moving forward so you can get right back on track. Now, this one is a really hard idea for me to feel like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do, because I was someone that was like, if you drink, you are back to day one, you're starting your journey over. And that motivated me. That doesn't motivate everybody. I always tell everybody, you got to know yourself. If you're telling yourself that and you're like, well, then I'm just going to drink because I know I'm going to mess up in the future anyway. If that's how you're feeling, then I want you to have a plan in place where you're going to have compassion for yourself. You're going to know exactly how to handle it moving forward. So I know that was a lot of information thrown at you, but I want you to know that a clear identity as someone who does not drink, plus fewer daily decisions, plus the if-then plan, plus self-endorsed motivation like I want to quit drinking equals less friction and more follow-through. So how do you step into the never again mindset? I know that I'm saying like, at day 100 to 150, I just decided I'm never drinking again. And it became really easy. But how did it actually happen and how can it happen for you? Number one, you can write the identity sentence just like I did. I wrote down, I don't drink. I do not drink. I put it on my phone lock screen. I could have written it down on a sticky note on my mirror. I could have it on a sticky note on my computer. I could have it so when I get into my car, it's on my steering wheel. Like seriously, you have to have this sentence everywhere. Now, I didn't do all these things. I didn't put this sentence everywhere, but I did write it down every single day, and I said it out loud every single day. So it got so ingrained into my brain. I want you to try this. I want you to actually practice writing it down and saying it out loud for 30 days. See if it changes for you. And along these lines of having an identity sentence, I want you to swap any language like I can't or I'm trying not to I don't. Make it cut and dry. Okay, I don't do this thing. I don't do that anymore. When we say things like I'm trying to, that's not very powerful. So make it really powerful for your brain and very empowering. The next thing you can do is a 10-minute why I want this drill. You're going to list out 10 want to reasons tied to your values. These can be things like health, presence with your family, presence in your life, creative energy, more time freedom because you're not spending your time drinking or being hungover, or having more money because you're not spending your money on alcohol. What are all of the reasons you want to ditch alcohol? Write those down. When you're doing this, you're building autonomous motivation. It's motivation coming from you. It's not motivation coming from everybody else. And this is something you could do weekly. You could do it monthly, whatever works for you. But do the 10-minute why I want this drill. Now, before we talked about having that if-then plan in place, I actually want you to build 3 if-then cards. Use some index cards and write down 3 if-then scenarios. Here's some examples for you. If it's 5 p.m. and the craving hits, then I'm going to make a non-alcoholic drink and step outside for 5 minutes. If a friend pushes a drink on me, then I'm just going to smile and say, nah, I don't drink anymore. I'm actually just going to go grab a Spindrift. And a last example for you is if I feel stressed after work, then I'm going to do a 10-minute walk plus listen to my uplifting playlist that I've created. Now, that does mean that you need to go build that uplifting playlist, but you can also just have funny podcasts that you have on hand that work for this too. Now, I actually have 10 different things you can do to build this mindset, and we've been through 3, so now we're on to number 4. I want you to create 1-move defaults. Remove alcohol from your house, pre-stock alternatives, pre-order non-alcoholic beverages at restaurants when you book. These things are all one move. They're not these huge things that you need to do. They're just one simple thing. And these defaults are going to shrink your decisions that you need to make throughout the day. Number 5, I want you to script out 5 refusals. I have a few examples for you, but I want you to keep going on this because I really do think these are personal to all of us, and all of us have a person in mind that we might have to say no to. So here's a few examples. You could write down, I don't drink, but I would love a LaCroix or a Spindrift or something like that if you have it. Another refusal could be, actually, I'm alcohol-free now, and it has been the best change for me. When you rehearse these and you write these down, it might feel silly at first, but rehearsal actually makes that identity become fluent and easy for you. I practiced refusing drinks so much in my head when I first quit drinking, and I actually barely needed to use those refusals, but having them in place made me feel more confident when I went out to socialize. Number 6 is to build a social architecture. I want you to tell 2 safe people that you're quitting drinking. These can be your people that you schedule plans with, or they can be the people that you say, hey, I'm going to go do this thing this weekend. Is it okay if I text you during it just to tell you how it's going, or if I feel like I need a little support? I also want you to start scheduling your weekend plans so that they align with your new identity. And then all those if-then sentences that you've created, I want you to share them with the 2 safe people. Number 7, I want you to have a relapse plan that kills the shame spiral. Now, this one would have made me really nervous because I would have been like, no, I'm not going to relapse. I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to drink anymore. I could think about it in my brain and just mentally prepare myself a little bit if I needed to. Something like, if a slip happens, I'm going to stop at 1. I'm going to hydrate. I'm going to text one of my 2 safe people. I can journal about the trigger, and then I can get to my next best move. You could rename it something like a speed bump instead of a relapse. And then I want you to get right back to the I don't at your next decision point. For number 8, I want you to track wins that prove the identity. I did this by writing down one thing that happened to me each day because I chose not to drink. This is simple daily one-line evidence for you that you're really doing this. You are becoming a non-drinker. So writing down things like, I slept 8 hours last night and I slept all the way through the night. Or I woke up in the morning and I did an early morning workout without feeling miserable. Maybe something you write down is, I was able to drive my kids somewhere in the evening because I hadn't been drinking. Tracking all of these wins is going to cement the feeling of, this is who I am now. Now for number 9, I want you to swap coping, not just the drink. So what do I mean by this? I want you to pair cravings with regulation tools. Things like breath work, brisk walks, quick protein snack, maybe a cold rinse, or even just running your hands under cold water. 90 seconds of surfing the urge. That's where we picture ourselves really riding the wave of the urge. These implementation intentions are going to work best when the replacement is ready. Now, number 10 is optional, but it is so powerful. Anchor this publicly. If you need to at first, you can tell someone who it doesn't really matter to. You could be checking out at a grocery store and getting your non-alcoholic beer, and you can tell the person, hey, I'm actually getting non-alcoholic beer because I don't drink anymore. Now, this actually happened to me because the grocery outlet in my area, the lady knew that me and my husband always came for the wine sale, and we would leave with like a cart or 2 full of wine, right? We would have cases that we would buy at this wine sale. And she even said, I didn't see you at the wine sale this year. And I actually got to say, yeah, we quit drinking, so we aren't going to be your number 1 customers anymore at the wine sale. I was able to play it off with a little humor, but I was actually able to announce it publicly. And that started anchoring my identity. So think of ways you can do this where it doesn't feel as scary. Then think of some other people you can tell. If you're part of the Daymakers community, you can tell the Daymakers. If you do something like my Push to 100 or my 30-day alcohol-free challenge, that's another place where you can really start to anchor your identity publicly. This quiet announcement, or sometimes what feels like a big announcement of saying I'm alcohol-free now, is how the identity sticks. I know that this was a ton of information, but I really hope that all these tools and strategies are going to help you nail down that one mindset that can make this start feeling easier. I'm never going to drink again. You do not have to white knuckle this journey forever. You decide once, and then you get to design around that decision. I'm so excited for you to take on this new mindset. And remember, if you feel like you need some extra support in the mindset space, then download those 10 mantras. They're free and they will be sent right to your email. And they even come with a cool screensaver of all the 10 mantras that you can put on your phone. So you can open up your phone and see those 10 mantras every single time. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, I have one favor to ask you, and that's to please rate and review this podcast if you haven't already. It's the best way to support the podcast, and it's totally free. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll be in your ear in the next episode.